Hey guys, sorry for getting this video out so late. I've been dealing with a couple things that have really set me back with recording, and I also had to wait for the broadcast to come out because I'm not going to use a camera app to source visuals. That's just not cool. And just a heads up, I'm going to go with a different format for this review. I won't be going into too much observational detail on all the little main 6 moments that highlight each character, or all the great little background character cameos, instead covering the broad strokes of the movie's plot and themes and focusing on the film's major players. So here we go. Rainbow Rocks illustrates how music can be utilized as a vector for social control. It features diametrically opposed factions who successfully convert an unsuspecting populace to extreme and conflicting ideologies through the use of media. Through most of the film, our hero is embroiled in a psychological arms race, crafting a song for the sole purpose of manipulating people around her better than her rivals can. When these topics are considered family entertainment, what does this say about the state of mass media in our society? Okay, seriously though. Reprising her role as writer from the first film, Megan McCarthy brings us the latest tale of everybody's favorite anthropoid equine surrogates, the Equestria Girls. Rainbow Rocks picks up following the events of Season 4 as we see what Twilight's friends at Canterlot High have been up to in her absence. After her defeat by the main 6, Sunset Shimmer has become part of the circle of friends, though she's still getting the hang of the whole friendship thing. Despite having changed, she finds she's unable to escape from her past. Her influence on the other students has subsided, but a lingering bitterness over her former deeds remains. Shockingly for My Little Pony plot, the consequences of Sunset Shimmer's actions last longer than a 2-minute conversation with someone close to them. That's an Academy record. On top of all this, a suitable threat surfaces for this musical movie in our new villains, the Sirens. How does Rainbow Rocks stack up to the previous film? How does it compare to the show? Let's take a look. First off, I want to cover the visuals. Overall, the style of animation hasn't changed greatly. For the most part, the characters still retain their cel-shaded appearance. But Season 4 of the show featured numerous improvements in the tool set, particularly in lighting and overall background details, that really made it stand out from previous years, and these definitely come through in Rainbow Rocks. Depth of field effects abound, not just separating the scene into planes, but with graduated effects along floors and ceilings. The movie is reserved with the enhanced lighting, and this really helps the scenes where it's used stand out. While sometimes this is just to match the lighting of a scene, where it really shines is in the musical numbers. The new lighting, along with excellent use of bloom, crepuscular rays, and the occasional lens flare, perfectly captures the feel of powerful stage lighting and makes each song in the movie an event. The animators deserve a lot of credit, but the effects guys should get a medal for this one. Rainbow Rocks features some of the best flash animation I've ever seen. One challenge this movie had to face, regardless of the story, was how to reintroduce Twilight's character from Equestria. The first movie relied on several time constraints to force the characters into action, including the deadline for the fall of Wormel, as well as the closing of the portal. In a great example of utilizing existing canon while leveraging new characters, the movie creates the elegant solution of using Sunset Shimmer's position as Celestia's student and the letters to Celestia to tie the two worlds back together. Not only does this make economical use of time, but the familiar words written by Sunset tie the two worlds together not just for the story, but for the audience as well. The first Equestria Girls movie had the handicap of needing to establish the human world and its characters. Using a remix of the show's theme in the opening credits and starting the movie out in Equestria, the movie uses familiarity with the show to establish the series' My Little Pony roots before diving in. Rainbow Rocks opts to hit the ground running with the events at Canterlot High, using both a completely new song for the credits as well as focusing on the events of the school through the first 20 minutes of the movie. While this shows more confidence in Equestria Girls standing on its own 2 feet, both the duration since the previous film and the series' reliance on leveraging the show's characters means that it really needs to develop this connection. Sunset's Journal neatly tackles this problem, showing great care and attention to detail in the writing. On this topic, the introduction of Twilight's counterpart after the credits opens the door for an even greater separation between the two series, with Twilight's counterpart filling the role of Twilight from Season 1 and Equestrian Twilight taking on the role of Celestia as the group's mentor rather than their leader. Granted, this would be a really big change for the series, but after the introduction of Sunset's Journal and Twilight's Double, they certainly have set themselves up to go down that path. Oh, and speaking of neatly tackling problems, I really don't get people who think that Vinyl Scratch showing up at the end is contrived. Perfect timing? Yes. Contrived? Not so much. Vinyl's incessant headphone usage is an established character trait, and it's believable that this would render her unaffected by the sirens. Plus, it leads into a way for the Rinbooms to perform that's not sharing the same stage as the Dazzlings. Was the car too much? Let's consider the alternative. Epic windy hillside battleground versus standing 5 feet from your opponent and having them politely respecting your personal space while you set up your instruments to defeat them. Like it or not, it's a pretty clever solution. Oh, and for anyone still hung up on the terrifying product placement that is Vinyl Scratch's car, I have 5 words for you. Sweetie Belle's Gumball House Surprise. I mean, at least go and complain about the heavy-handed musical harmony / elements of harmony parallel that the movie tries to use. Though I joke, the songs by Daniel Ingram and Megan McCarthy are fantastic, no surprise considering how integral music is to this story. 10 songs comprise the soundtrack, mostly diegetic tracks performed by the characters within the movie covering major plot and thematic elements. Styles aren't too varied, but there's a really nice delineation between the protagonists and the antagonists. Most notably in the Battle of the Bands song, Welcome to the Show. Strangely not, Let's Have a Battle of the Bands. There's also a nice symmetry in the soundtracks between the end of Better Than Ever and opening to Under Our Spell, a connection that unfortunately gets lost in the movie as the songs play nowhere near each other. There's a good energy to the Rain Boom songs, but I find myself gravitating to the other tracks. While each of the main 6 get their requisite solo line or 2 in their songs, most of the time the tracks feature everyone singing together. Having the Rain Boom singing as a group makes sense thematically, but the lack of a clear vocalist turns everything into kind of vocal stew. All the constituent elements like Rarity's vocal flourishes are there, but indistinct, and there's rarely much of a harmony to spice things up. Contrast this to the Dazzling songs, like Let's Have a Battle. Subtle inflections in Adagio's performance really stand out against Sonata and Aria's harmonizing, which each vary slightly but noticeably from each other, the net result being a very rich and layered vocal performance. Unfortunately, the song with perhaps the best vocals is almost cut from the movie, as we hear most of Trixie's Tricks Up My Sleeve through the floor of the stage. The range displayed in this song frankly puts the rest of the tracks to shame. The performance is as grandiose as Trixie herself. The tone jumps between confident and condescending, cocky, playful, boastful, disgusted, with a powerful delivery. Trixie's belting out the last few lines being unmatched anywhere else in the movie. And, honestly, some of the most creative lyrics on the soundtrack to boot. These comments don't cover every song in the movie. Awesome As I Wanna Be and Shine Like Rainbows being 2 big outliers for the Rain Booms, but general observations of where certain songs hit and miss compared to each other. Overall, each song makes its mark where the movie needs it and complement the presence of both the main characters and the series' new villains. The Sirens feel right at home as My Little Pony villains, with the writers once again leveraging existing mythology with a creative twist, and are a perfect choice for such a music-centric story. I had concerns with the first movie's decision to shift from a relatable everyday villain to raging she-demon, but it does keep with the show's style of mixing both down-to-earth and adventurous elements into the stories. Though the more real-life setting of Equestria Girls could have been matched with a toned-down emphasis on mythological elements, this juxtaposition is part of the show's identity, and it's reassuring to see it repeated here. History repeats itself from the last movie as we see these villains come from Equestria as well, having been banished by Starswirl the Bearded. Would that make Earth the equestrian equivalent of Australia? This origin does raise a couple issues though. I've read arguments over how old this makes the Sirens, why they're still teenagers, and of course why, when they witness the fight from the first movie, they wait an entire season before making a move. Clearly, the answer to this is in Twilight's struggle with the counterspell. Let's just pretend it took the Dazzlings all year to quite literally get their act together. And once more talking about Twilight, tying the magic brought by Twilight into the plot of the Sirens is an effective way of allowing existing villains to essentially roam the world while making the main characters the center of action. For a movie trying to be more relatable to its audience, I appreciate the symbolism of the villains being threats that exist in our world, their genesis in Equestria notwithstanding, as well as their influence coming from manipulation rather than force. Though I think Sunset Shimmer gets more credit in this respect, as there was nothing special about her for most of the movie. Any character could have done what Sunset Shimmer does. While the Dazzlings do have a more threatening presence here, and a lot of that is due to how the characters carry themselves in a scene, most of the time, it wouldn't work if they didn't have magic to back it up. Adagio Dazzle is suitably menacing, though her cohorts Sonata Dusk and Aria Blaze fill in the role of Snips and Snails from the previous film as the bumbling sidekicks. For a kids' movie, it strikes a balance, making the villains threatening without being frightening, typical for MLP's antagonists. A few concerns though: the Dazzlings' motivations aren't very fleshed out, and outside of their bickering, neither are their characters. I will say this though, while the characters aren't particularly deep, they are distinct, as the movie does a good job showing how each character fits into the group dynamic. The Dazzlings also get a decent amount of screen time, but the focus is always on what they're doing, not why they're doing it. Adagio Dazzle mentions before the titles that they're going to acquire the equestrian magic and use it to, quote, make everyone in this pathetic little world adore us. If you missed that line, you're out of luck, because it doesn't come up again until the climax. The Siren's lyrics in the opening of Welcome to the Show, "We will be adored, tell us that you want us, we won't be ignored, it's time for our reward," is a great way to bookend this topic that the movie never bothers addressing. Well, almost never. Adagio does mention the equestrian magic will give them the power they need to get the entire world to do their bidding, so their goal is world domination? Way to get even more generic, movie. How exactly does being adored factor into that? They seem to be controlling the school just fine. According to Sonata Dusk, they sing all the time because that's how we get people to do whatever we want. And that's really the only reason we see them using their powers: to set up the competition and manipulate the school. Their actions are always driven by a desire for manipulation, not adoration. It's not a deal breaker for most of the movie, but it does highlight some deficiencies in the development of the Dazzlings. On the side of the protagonist, Sunset Shimmer gets more of the movie's proverbial spotlight, if not the rain booms. The fate of Sunset Shimmer's character mirrors that of several characters from the show, namely the persecution faced by Trixie between the events of Ghostbusters and Magic Duel, and Discord following his reformation in Keep Calm and Flutter On. Each of these events unfold in a manner as unique as the characters involved, but always with elements of the same cautionary tale. You can change, but you can't change your past. While Discord's story focuses more on the main six's reactions to him, and Trixie's focuses on what the experience can turn you into, Rainbow Rocks focuses on Sunset Shimmer's struggle to overcome her past and her living with the repercussions from the actions of her past self. Sadly, this doesn't seem to play too much into the movie, and while we're continually reminded of it, it serves more as a running gag, with the main six awkwardly bringing up the events of the previous movie. While playing these scenes for laughs lessens the connection with Sunset's feelings, it does subtly hint at the real source of her troubles, namely herself. Sunset Shimmer is her own worst enemy in this movie. The main six apologize when they bring up Sunset's past because they see how it bothers her, but repeatedly having the main six casually drop the subject into conversation reinforces the fact that it doesn't have any baggage for them. They don't care. Sunset Shimmer cares. At times, she's visually ashamed when it's mentioned, and angered when it's thrown in her face by Trixie or the Dazzlings. She obsesses over her past, letting it control her, and this holds her back. Her situation is one the main six can't realistically be placed in, making the character of Sunset Shimmer a great asset to the movie. Her struggles are unique and important if we're to accept that the ideals extolled here can make one a better person. Unfortunately, her subplot does resolve in a disappointingly brief fashion, but shares some underlying messages with Twilight's trouble with the counterspell. Sunset Shimmer misses her goal by obsessing over her problem and missing what's in front of her. Twilight's counterspell is exactly the same situation. The spell is a complete red herring. Just like their failed attempt at the party, the spell shows that friendship is only magic when it's genuine. It can't be faked or forced. They have the magic they need because they have each other, just like the proof that Sunset's past doesn't define her is the fact that she's already surrounded by friends who accept her as the person she is in the present. It's got a bit of a Wizard of Oz feel to it, as the characters are searching for something they had all along. Sunset Shimmer may be a little rough around the edges, grabbing the CMC's paintbrush before offering to help first, but she's already the kind of person to help a friend in need, and doesn't fall apart like the rest of the main six. And the Rainboom's magic shows through even before Twilight returns, because their music is a product of their friendship and ability to work together. Yet despite these solutions being in plain sight, Twilight feels compelled to work the problem out alone in isolation, exactly the opposite of what Celestia had her do when she sent Twilight to Ponyville to learn about friendship. This complaint's come up with Twilight in the past, but she is officially the Princess of Friendship now. She probably should know better. There's a terrific scene when this connection between the characters' problems comes through, if for just a moment. Through most of the movie, there's a lot of parallel stories happening. Twilight can't fix things, villains are plotting, Sunset's haunted by her past, sabotage occurs. It's this constant stream of action. But then the movie takes this moment and just hits the pause button. Twilight goes down to the kitchen to work on the counterspell, and Sunset Shimmer walks in on her. Nothing else is happening in the movie at this point. The other characters aren't just off screen, they're asleep. We never even visit the kitchen set outside of this scene, despite the big pizza moment earlier. There's no baggage to the setting, it's as close to being outside the movie as the characters are gonna get. The songs and background music are replaced by a dull, monotonous white noise of the refrigerator. And even the lighting, tight and directional on the characters, keeps the background in shadow and the focus on the characters. It's just Twilight and Sunset talking. Their problems are on their minds, but not confronting them at this moment. Removed from the school that plagues Sunset or the competition stressing out Twilight, it's a quiet, candid moment where they open up. The irony of this scene is that the characters are sharing their problems with the solution to their problems. While we wish that the characters would realize this in the moment, and the movie teases us with Twilight asking Sunset a question, it's wonderful that one of the most suspenseful moments in the movie comes in its quietest scene. And it's clear that a great deal of thought went into crafting this exchange. And that's really what's worth taking away from this review. I could drone on about the incredible composition shots, the effects work and the song segments, creative use of rack focus, Boulder's midnight snack, Octavia's voice, Derpy's band. But what matters is that from the writing to the score, the storyboards, and the direction, it shows care and effort and respect for the show and the characters, and in doing so succeeds more than it falters. While the main six fighting might seem a borderline cliche at this point, it portrays a realistic expectation of what friendship is, and doesn't make everything overly saccharine. Rainbow Rocks is a solid follow-up to the first film, and a fantastic mix of humor, action, and touching moments. And I can't wait to see what they come up with next. See you next time.